Today I am giving you the secret sauce on how to turn your iPhone cinematic once and for all. If you don't know me, I'm Andy, full-time camera nerd and content creator, and I've seen so many 16-minute videos on making your iPhone cinematic blah blah blah. But let's cut the crap. I've tested everything possible. I've even made a full travel film in my time in Korea using this phone, and it's only an iPhone 15. Point is, let's dive right in and unlock the potential of this phone. Okay, so let me put you on some game right now. This is my jank top-down rig, and if you are using an iPhone with the native camera app, there's not that much you can change, but there are a few key things that you can change that does make a decent difference. First, let's address ProRes log. This setting shoots in a very flat profile, but the gigabytes are ridiculous. Like literally I have 0 minutes that's available and it's not worth it. So unless you have an SSD and you're okay with like 15 gigabytes for just a short clip, don't use it. It's honestly a waste of time and it's not worth the hassle. So the first most obvious and important setting is shooting in 4K. I shoot in 4K 30 because everything on Instagram, TikTok, it runs on 30 frames per second. 24 frames is what every movie is shot on, but we're not making movies here. And even if you are doing something cinematic, honestly, in my opinion, people are more used to 30 frames per second, so it'll look normal to them and not jittery. And like I said, the apps are designed for 30 FPS. If you want to be a full-on filmmaker, use 24, that's okay, but make sure you're shooting 4K. Next, and probably the most important feature, is exposure lock. You see, iPhones and the general public refer to bright things as well, vibrant and inviting, right? But often on iPhones, you overexpose the image when you are at 0 exposure. That's what the camera automatically does. I'll recommend going to minus 0.7 to ensure that your image is not overexposed, or even minus 0.3 if you notice it's slightly darker than expected. Just by preserving highlights, your footage will look more cinematic. Now that's great and all, but your iPhone is going to forget this. So let's scroll down here to this camera page. And now you can see all the frame rates I'm using, 4K at 30. This should all be pretty sound. Let's go into here. And you can see as well, really quickly. Okay, so the trick is if you go preserve settings and you save exposure adjustment, turn this on, that's what's going to save your exposure adjustment, that negative 0.7 every time you open the camera app. So that's really important. All these other things you can have what I've set here, not super important. And it's up to your preference. Now let's look at these formats real quick. I said 4K 30, you can have a look here. I've turned enhanced stabilization on. We all want steady videos. This has a really tiny crop on your videos, but I think it's worth it. HDR video, definitely leave that on. And another really key feature is you should lock your white balance while recording video. This is the most unprofessional thing ever. If, for example, you're shooting something warm and your white balance shifts to blue mid-video, you want it to be able to be locked the second it starts throughout the whole video so you don't have weird color shifting. Now let's just look at formats real quick. I choose high efficiency because your camera storage is so expensive and it doesn't make much of a difference. So make sure you just keep high efficiency on. You can have a look at what else I have, and that's practically it in terms of these settings. Grids are helpful. Level is also nice, but these aren't really necessary to be fair. And the last thing I would recommend is always use your 1x camera whenever you can. You see, the 1x camera has the biggest sensor possible. It can let in most light. It has the highest dynamic range. Long story short, it's the highest quality. So always use that. Only use 0.5 and 3 times if you're doing something artistically different, and just try and make sure you have ample amounts of light, because the 1x camera will have the best low light performance. Also, it's quite obvious, but don't zoom between these points. For example, like 2 point something like that. Don't do that because you're just digitally zooming in, which destroys the quality. Okay, so using the native app is cool and all, and those settings definitely do something, but there's two main problems. One, the image is just really digital and sharp. You can kind of tell it has an iPhone look straight away. And two, there is no motion blur. Whenever you see motion like this, there is a natural blur, even to your naked eye. And every movie replicates this. So let me try how to fix that and try and bridge that gap. This right here is the Blackmagic app. And what this app can do is it gives full manual control to your iPhone camera, so it literally operates as the current cameras I'm operating right now. Let's first break down the most optimal settings. So I'm shooting in H.265, which is a compressed format. Ideally, you can obviously pick any of these ProRes formats, but they are huge and the differences are so marginal. If you've got tons of space, go for it, but I don't, and lots of people don't bother. H.265 works. Now, bitrate I have on high. You can try max again, takes up more space, and honestly the differences are really small, and in the grand scheme of things, when you go to YouTube, Instagram, no one's going to notice. Now resolution, pretty obvious, we talked about it, shoot 4K, which is really important. The color space is also super important. Make sure you set this on Apple Log. And the magic inside the Blackmagic app is that you can record normal sized files with Apple Log, which is really important and useful. Now you should definitely enable vertical video in case you want to shoot a vertical video, because if you don't, you're literally just going to get a cropped in video, which is no use. So turn this on. All these settings here are quite up to your own preference. On shutter measurement, use angle. This is a really good filmmaking setting, which basically you set to 180 degrees and you get the perfect type of shutter speed. You can add all this stuff here as well. Just copy me, nothing crazy to point out. Now feel free to copy all these settings, it's nothing crazy. But what I do also recommend is using the display LUT. So Apple log is basically a really flat profile, and without this LUT, it will look flat too, so you can't really tell what you're filming. So make sure you display it. The LUT selection is basically Apple to Rec 709. It should be default there, or you might have to download it, but it comes in already set anyway. And scrolling down, that is practically it. So on this app, you normally use horizontally, and it's super straightforward and intuitive to use. Like I said, make sure you set the shutter angle to 180 degrees. If you're filming 30 frames per second, this will give you natural motion blur. The white balance, it comes in auto. Make sure you take it off auto. And then what you can actually do, if you really don't know how to set white balance, basically click auto, and once the machine has got the white balance for you, take auto off and just use that white balance, and you can reset every time. But if you're outside, when in doubt, you can just go something like 5500 Kelvin and you'll be fine. You can do the exact same thing for tint, hit auto, see where it lands, take it off, and then you can film, no worries. You can change the lenses in the right-hand corner. Remember, the 24mm is best, and only go to 77 or 13 because that's the main cameras. And that's practically how you use this app. Now there is one thing that is very important to use this app properly, and it's an ND filter. Unfortunately, because you can't change the aperture on these cameras because they're so small on an iPhone, you need sunglasses to basically block the light. When I was in Korea, I was literally walking around, phone in one hand, ND filter covering, and I just filmed like this, which was really inconvenient, not super ideal. It gets the job done. Or have a look at this pop-up, and this is a link to a case that has a variable ND filter, which does work great and would be a lot more convenient, but again, it's a lot more hardcore. Now to use this, all you do is you set the ND properly and just basically expose it depending on what it looks like on the phone. Because we turned the Rec 709 LUT on, whatever you see in the phone and how it looks in terms of exposure is basically how it ends up. So just make sure when you're filming, it doesn't look too dark and doesn't look too bright, and the highlights are preserved. There's also a really small histogram, like this thing in the bottom right corner. And basically you want to keep the histogram mainly in the middle, which means proper exposure. When filming, try and be careful not to crank the ISO too high, but sometimes it's a phone, it doesn't have the best low light performance. Last thing I will mention is just make sure you keep the stabilization on. I've tried it off and on, and because you're shooting handheld, it is worth it leaving it on. Now level 3, and to finish everything off, you need to get on Davinci Resolve. Let's go. This is how we turn our log footage into something a lot more vibrant, lively, and cinematic. So whenever you're using Davinci Resolve, we look at this cog, and these should be the Davinci default color management settings. So just make sure these are the same. Long story short, don't worry about it too much. This could be on color management, but I just like doing the color managing myself. Long story short, just copy this. So let's go to color space transform, and basically what this does is we have a really flat image, and our input color space was basically what we shot the iPhone on, right? So that was the Apple log. So that's in a Rec 2020 format, and we have Apple log here. Don't worry, it looks bad right now. I hit Option SS twice. The output color space here would be Rec 709, and then I want Cineon film log. So I'm going to do a real quick way in order to actually get a nice grade in the fastest amount of time possible. We've got these color space transform settings. Basically, we're taking the image from a Apple log image and then we're converting it to Rec 709, but in a Cineon film log output gamma. So what that basically means is now we can slap one of these Davinci Resolve LUTs on. So we go LUT here, and we go to film looks, and we can pick any of these Kodak LUTs, and then voila, we've got a graded image from flat back to something cool. And everyone likes warm colors, so let's just go here, and if we pick a D55, that's the warmer version. Fantastic. So you don't actually need this node here. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a node serial before, so that's Option S, which I could have done. And now this node is where we basically control and adjust everything. Okay, so this is what you do straight out of the box. If you've never used Davinci Resolve, we've got lift, gamma, gain, shadows, midtones, and highlights. So in this case, let's turn up the midtones a little bit because it does look a bit dark in this area. Maybe a little bit more. That's nice. And then we want quick results fast. So a little trick I'd say, let's just name this HSV. How all these Instagrammers or whatever get this nice saturation is you just go here, you go to gamma, you hit HSV, where are you? color space, you go to HSV, and then you go to channels, you turn the first one and the third one off, and now all you do is go to gain, and you crank this, and then basically you get a better type of saturation, long story short, and it doesn't mess with how bright and how dark the colors are. So we increase it here, and now that's looking nice and juicy. And now something else which is super trendy is if we hit Option S again, we can actually do a little bit of a kind of like Pro Mist effect. I'll show you what I mean right now. So if we hit this up to about 1.5, we're in the blur tab here, so we'll go to like 1.5, very blurry, all good. We go to composite mode, and then we go screen, and now everything is like a light blurry mess. But if we go to the graph and we hit editable splines, click the bottom part here, we can actually drag this over, and we have like a cool little cinematic-y blur, kind of like halation effect up here. A long story short breakdown of what we've actually done is we've made the whole thing blurry, and because we use screen, basically only the light parts come through in this composite mode, and because we use this to cut out all the dark parts, only the light parts give us this nice little filmic blur, if that makes sense. So let's just name this Pro Mist. Okay, so now with just this framework, we can basically color grade anything. If the book's a bit dark to you, it will increase the gamma a little bit more, and then that looks pretty nice and cinematic. Now, literally what we can do is we can get all these clips, hit the middle click on your keyboard, replace everything. Oops, that's the same clip. But if you look at all these clips, they've all got the exact same settings and a lot more filmy now. This, as you can see, doesn't look quite right. And if you ever have differences in kind of the colors, you should come to this offsets reel, and basically we can change the color. So from my eye right now, like these shadows right here, they're all kind of purple. So I'd take this and go a bit more to the yellow side / green side, and then that looks a lot more normal and filmy. If I want to make it more warm, I can just drag it up a little bit and get like a really cool warm look. Or if it's too yellow, a little bit more to the green, and it's like kind of yellow and teal kind of look, which is pretty cool. So that obviously shouldn't copy there. That looks fine to me. Maybe similarly, a little bit more to blue. You can make it really sunsetty if you want. And then the highlights, we can add some more of that if we really like. It's like overdoing it, but I'm just showing you examples. I copied the exact same thing here. Looks nice, golden, beautiful. And lastly, we can do this here as well. Maybe perhaps we want to go like a really exaggerated, boost the sunset, add some contrast here. And then, as you can see, nice and graded from that. So that is a really quick way to get a cinematic / filmy look in a very short amount of time that appeals to people on Instagram. And I made this a lot more simple and basic because we want results fast. If you want this node tree, look at the description here or the link here and you can have it for free. But if you really want to dive in, get the most out of your footage on your phone, on even normal looking footage like this, for example, this is not a log shot. Your Sony camera, your Canon camera, any type of camera, action camera, everything, check out my Davinci Resolve course. It goes through how I color grade every single video from every single device, and you'll really understand every part of this software. Obviously, I skipped across a lot of these main functionalities here. But trust me, if you have a look at this course, take the time to learn, you will never need to use or even buy another LUT again. But regardless, comment your thoughts, your feedback. I read every single comment. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.